What is something that is a reasonably performing property with the percentage, and what's a great performing percentage? What's the range?
Yeah. Well, so before I answer that, Katrina, how would I know?
I don't know.
Anyone else
On
want to
past
answer that?
performance, I guess.
It depends on the market.
Ask the client what they think is a great return.
That's another, yeah. That's actually a great point, right? I had a client in the middle of this. I said, hey, Nick, just curious, like, what would you do with the money? And I said, Brian, that's a great question, but if I'm being honest, I'm 30 years younger than you, and I do real estate for a living. So what I would do with the money is far different from what you would do with the money, because we're in two different boats. At the same time, what would the money have to perform like such that you'd be happy you were invested in it? Right? Like, what is that number? Well, I don't know, Nick. Katrina, that's what they asked me too, right? And the reason I know is because I talk to agents like you guys across the United States, and I make that a habit. Right? I'm looking at investment properties in the South daily. I get feeds from 3 or 4 different agents. I'm underwriting deals. I'm talking to DST brokers. I'm talking to general partner funds, right? I'm figuring out what is the market and what are all the opportunities for investment, so I can understand. If I don't know that information, how can I advise a client of what's good and what's bad? So to answer your question, Katrina, right now, properties that I'm seeing, that I'm looking at in North Carolina, South Carolina, Tennessee, you can find properties today that are generating an 8% cash on cash. Right now, again, also understand that we need to be zooming out with this conversation. And before we talk about cash on cash, return rates and stuff, make sure that's the conversation, right? Because if we're having a really heavy number conversation right now, but it's not always the reason. It's one of the reasons. But a lot of other people too that I work with, most of my clients are anywhere from 65 to 95 years old. So most of them are looking for simplicity. Most of them are looking for, how do I not deal with tenants, toilets, trash, right? How do I enjoy the fruits of my labor that I've been building this for?
Nick, I think that's likely to be a really pertinent conversation a year from now and 2 years from now, with all these folks who are putting their primary residence into rental situations because they're on such good interest rates. And a year from now, they realize, who the hell wants to deal with the toilets?
Yep. And they need to know, right? This is something that's very important. I tell people this a lot when they're moving out of their property, whether they should rent it out or sell it. Right? And going through that conversation to say, well, how long are you committed to that strategy for? Is this like a try it out thing for a year or two? Is this like, no, I'll set it and forget it for the next 10? Because if you're not like 10 years or 5 years committed on it, then I'm going to tell you to get out of jail free and not pay taxes down the road for all this capital gains.